I have a space question, and you
Yes.
can consider whether you want other questions. And my colleagues can try and convince you. What is your memory of Sputnik? And I realize you probably weren't very old, but what was your memory of it, and how did it influence you in your decisions?
Well, I guess the fact that I do remember it speaks to my age. I was 8 years old at the time, and I sort of felt a buzz around me. And I think one thing that I do definitely remember is I was in grade 2 at the time. I remember going to school and the teacher saying, "Boys and girls, have you all heard that there is now this artificial object that is going around the Earth? It's called a satellite, and it was put up in space by another country, Russia and the Soviet Union, and this is going to mean that from now on we're going to go up there in space and do lots more things." And so I remember the sense of occasion that it was coming.
How do you think that specific event influenced technology or space development in Canada particularly?
It had a direct impact, and what happened here in Ottawa, in fact, people at an organization doesn't exist anymore called the Defense Research Telecommunications Establishment, which is out in Shirley's Bay, got to work right away and said, we have to build a satellite. And it's a remarkable story because these scientists and engineers started from absolutely scratch. Remember, this is the beginning of the space program, and built a satellite called Rideau-1, a remarkable achievement. And we didn't develop rocket capability. We went to NASA, and that was the beginning of our partnership with NASA. And they launched it out of Vandenberg in California. And it worked for 10 years. In fact, it was still working when they turned it off. So it was a 100% successful experiment right from the beginning. Really a remarkable, in the annals of innovation, I think, and technology, a remarkable story. And that made Canada the third country in space. Certainly when the Americans saw Sputnik go over, the very next year, NASA was created, and DARPA, which is the defense agency that looks at space tech, and they're important for the country.
The Prime Minister talks about wanting to promote Canada's position on the world stage. Do you see this as part of that push toward improving Canada's international image?
We have a good image as far as our technological maturity and our accomplishments in space. I see this more as a yes. On the one hand, national objectives. Internationally, I think if we are going to be a voice on, for example, the peaceful uses of space, we have to have a presence, and we have to exert a presence, but it has to be based on a policy, what Canada's policies are with respect to the peaceful use and exploration of space. So internationally, yes, it helps, and you have to have a presence up there, otherwise your voice is weakened. From a national point of view, we have lots of national objectives dealing with the sovereignty of the North and environmental change that's occurring in our country, the monitoring of our natural resources, assistance in the case of natural disasters. There are a whole linking Canadians. There are a whole bunch of reasons where space makes a very, very big difference. It's a powerful tool. If I were to go like this right now and turn off all the satellites that Canada uses right now, I guarantee you would notice it within a minute, because it's that invisible infrastructure that's above your head, and you in the media use it a lot, that we depend on, but we're kind of unaware of because it's invisible above our heads. So it accomplishes a lot of very, very important things, and I think we need to give it more prominence because, as I say, I was in China 2 years ago. China is building 100 satellites between 2005 and 2010. They're going gangbusters. India has its own rocket programs. It's been launching satellites for decades, and it's putting a lot of emphasis on space. So everybody is going to space. Canada had a brilliant beginning. I think it's time, for example, at this point, perhaps to, pause for thought and look at, well, what will space mean for us, not tomorrow, but in the decades to come, and perhaps to develop a policy out of that, but from the very top.
It's going to take time to develop a space policy, and I'm trying to, so are you suggesting there is none now? There's no space policy?
No, there is no. There is what, and I'm very proud of this, when I was at the Canadian Space Agency, we prepared a document which was approved by the Cabinet in 2005 called the Canadian Space Strategy. But I would describe that document as a framework. Policy, in my view of what policy means, is a top-down exercise. It's where the leaders at the top decide, okay, we will use space to achieve certain objectives, certain strategic objectives, and they touch the kinds of areas that I talked about: security, sovereignty, environment, connecting Canadians, developing an innovative economy, those kinds of things. Now, it takes a conscious effort at the top to say space is important for this country, and rather than it being a bottom-up process where we push from the bottom and it can be a bit of an ad hoc process, this is actually leadership from the top. Now, I realize that space is not an election issue, but it is an issue where I think there are examples of issues where countries can make decisions that are beyond the election issue question and that are adopted because they're good for the country.
How vulnerable is this infrastructure to uses by hostile countries to, they could put a Western country out of business by knocking out these satellites? And how dangerous an environment are we moving into as far as the weaponization of space?
Well, as personally speaking, I'm against the weaponization of space, and I think here's another example where Canada, as part of its space policy, should, on the international scene, be making very, very clear that it, as a country, is against the weaponization of space. I think space should be, as exemplified in the principles that are part of this 1967 treaty on the peaceful uses of outer space, Canada should be emphasizing that it's important that everybody be reminded of our obligations under this treaty. Now, this treaty talks about banning weapons of mass destruction. It doesn't talk about all weapons, and that is something that perhaps the time has come for us to start thinking in that direction as well. Oui, on est en train de... Je crois que je nous placerai peut-être au 10e rang maintenant parmi les puissances spatiales. Nous avons quand même un programme qui a très très bien réussi dans les 45 dernières années et nous sommes les leaders dans certaines niches. Mais il faut faire attention à la complaisance et la réalité, par exemple, c'est que le budget de l'agence spatiale a été fixé à 300 millions de dollars en 1999 et il n'a pas changé depuis ce temps-là. Alors peut-être oui, les choses se déroulent assez bien, mais est-ce qu'on pourrait faire plus?
Parlant de souveraineté canadienne, le gouvernement Harper parle beaucoup d'assurer la souveraineté du Canada en Arctique. Comment l'espace peut être utilisé, je ne sais pas sur le plan technologique, pour assurer ça?
Ben, on peut, avec le genre de satellite que le Canada a développé, qui utilise un radar, et l'avantage d'un radar, c'est que ça voit la nuit et le jour, et que ça voit à travers les nuages, puis il y a beaucoup de nuages dans le Grand Nord. On a un satellite en orbite en ce moment qui s'appelle RadarSat, ça fait 12 ans qu'il est là. Nous avons proposé pour la prochaine décennie, pas un satellite, mais une constellation de satellites. Parce que si on veut, par exemple, pouvoir surveiller le trafic dans le passage du Nord-Ouest, par exemple, s'il devient plus navigable pendant des mois de temps, est-ce qu'on veut pouvoir observer le trafic de ces navires-là une fois tous les 3 heures, une fois tous les 12 heures, une fois par journée? C'est une décision qui doit être prise et ça affecte le nombre de satellites qu'on doit mettre dans notre constellation. Et puis, en ce moment, il y a un projet qui est partiellement approuvé pour la prochaine décennie qui comprend une constellation de 3 satellites. Ça va nous permettre, tous les 6 heures, de passer au-dessus du passage du Nord-Ouest et de voir le trafic qui est là. Par contre, parce que le Canada est en forme de triangle, ça veut dire qu'on verra les approches maritimes dans le sud beaucoup moins souvent. Alors, est-ce qu'on veut voir ce qui se passe au large des côtes de la Nouvelle-Écosse 2 fois par jour? Ça implique un certain nombre de satellites dans cette constellation. Alors, c'est une question de pouvoir savoir quand quelqu'un est en train de passer dans ce que nous prétendons est notre territoire.